Welcome back. In this segment, we have the opportunity to get a deeper look into the impactful initiatives spearheaded by the Development Finance Corporation. We are joined by our first guest, Mr. Henry Anderson, the CEO of the DFC. Welcome, Mr. Anderson, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be on your show.
Okay. So, Mr. Anderson, we'll start off a little bit about talking about profitability. So, despite the ongoing challenges, the DFC Corporation, it has achieved profit in 2022 after experiencing net losses for the previous 3 years. How did DFC successfully turn around its financial performance in 2022? And what specific strategies and factors contributed to this improvement?
All right, well, we had a lot going on. I think the first thing we had to do was to understand that as a development finance corporation, while development is our number one goal, we also have to do it by creating value. When I joined the DFC, the thinking of the leadership, or parts of the leadership, was that DFC, by losing money, that's the way how the government subsidizes the private sector. And clearly, as a development finance institution, DFC, while the motive is not profit, it can't incur losses. So we had to let the team understand that. We had to create a sense of purpose. And essentially, because of the years of losses the DFC has made, it has developed negative retained earnings. So we had to set a goal. So we said we want to develop the portfolio in 3 years without increasing our footprint by 20%, by more than 20%. The operating ratio for DFC at the end of 2020, coming out of COVID, was 88%, meaning if you take your sales and you divide it by the expenses, that's where they are. And we had to start the discussion of salaries and remuneration and everything. Management renegotiated a new package to take less but convert it to a performance bonus. So while the cost structure is going down, you are able to make back the money if you perform. And that was a big deal that they bought in. With them buying in, then that set the tone to actually change and refresh the processes and work on everything we do to just improve the quality of service and do the things we need to do to answer clients quicker. We're still not where we want to be, but we have made significant steps. I can tell you that at the end of 2020, DFC had lost 1.9 million. At the end of 2021, that went down to 600,000. As you said, it was profitable in 2022, a little over $1 million. And at the end of 2023, around 700,000 in profitability. So it has made a profit in 2 years in a row. So we are starting a trend. So it was not luck. So that's where we are. But introducing new products, streamlining processes, empowering the team. And I must thank the team, the leadership team, and all the members of the team who have gone out there. We had a budget last year called Operation Phoenix. And, they went out and basically for 2021, for 2022, and again in 2023, the annual performance has been the best for the last 5 years, year over years.
Okay, so we should expect to see that in your 2023 report. That's wonderful information.
The report should come out in about a month's time.
Okay. So throughout 2022, we know that DFC undertook significant efforts to modernize its operations and sort of pave the way for accreditation with the Green Climate Fund. And this was in an aim to become the only accredited institution in Belize capable of on-lending GCF funds. What impact do you anticipate these initiatives will have on Belize's development trajectory?
Massive. Well, let's talk about the DFC firstly. So we did several policies. I'll touch a couple of them, but we adopted investment policy. We adopted a risk asset and liability committee policy. We adopted an environmental and social safeguard policy. That's perhaps the biggest one, because embedded in that comes stakeholder engagement, grievance mechanism, and the creation of what is called, or the implementation of what is called an environmental and social management system. And in a nutshell, what that means, all of these policies were approved last year in April, and we started implementation and rolling them out, right? It's not just to gather dust, because when you're going for accreditation, you get accredited by saying what you will do and demonstrating in fact and in paper by clear evidence that you have done it. So in April last year, DFC started the piloting of its environmental and social management system. What that means is we're looking at our projects and we're looking to ensure that they're climate smart. So we look at all the vulnerability and the challenges and the issues there, and we work with the clients to make sure that at the end of the day, the project fits in with all of Belize's environmental and regulations, the social regulations, and we look for ways to ensure that the project is resilient. What that has done, or what that is doing, we applied for GCF accreditation at the end of January. We just got some update from them yesterday, so that process is actually moving. And GCF was here, 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about a project for the South, and looking, for example, banana, looking at the citrus, or I like to call it the juice industry. And we're looking for other cross-cutting thematic areas that we get into tourism and other areas. But, you know, looking to put together a first project you have to go through a phase, so it will take a number of years, of around, let's say, $40 million US. And that will be foreign currency coming in. That will be money that can do the heavy lifting that, let's say, the commercial banks will not accept that kind of risk profile. And it allows DFC then to do the work that the commercial banks shouldn't really be doing in terms of taking the kind of risks that we are geared to take, and at the same time building the economy, making it more resilient. So it will have a big impact over time. Some of these things are unfortunately slow, not because of the DFC, we're moving at lightning pace, but it's just, you know, it's a whole world of institutions they're working with. So we just have to keep the momentum going and go through the GCF process, but it will provide the seed financing that Belize requires to meet our national, or some of it, not all of it, obviously, to meet our NDCs, our national determined contributions,
okay,
which is a big part of ensuring Paris alignment and having a just transition and meeting, you know, the goals set out for 2030 and the bigger goals that comes for 2050 in terms of reduction in greenhouse gases.
All right. We know that Belize faces some significant climate-related risks, obviously, including hurricanes, storms, and flooding, making us the 61st highest exposed country to multiple hazards in the world. So how has DFC...
We're actually number 8.
Number 8. Okay.
In terms of climate change, we're number 8.
In terms of climate change. So how has DFC addressed Belize's vulnerability to climate-related risks through its operations particularly?
Well, for some years now, DFC has embedded climate smart financing into what it does. And as I just explained, rolling out the environmental and social management system allows us to look at every single project that we finance and ensure that they comply with all of the local regulations, and also allows us to work with the investors to ensure that, you know, when you talk about climate change, a lot of the time people think hurricanes and they have a hurricane plan, but there's a lot more to it than that. For example, if you're taking agriculture, right, the rains don't come when it used to come, or plants don't flower when they used to flower, so you need to do different things. You might need to put in better drainage, drip irrigation, and different things like that. So we work with them to put those things in the project. Solar, renewable energy efficiency, you know, equipment. We work, let's say, in the tourism sector and in other sectors to get them to, you know, move into our EEE and things of that nature. So we are doing those things. Obviously, it's a drop in the bucket so far because the DFC, our portfolio is relatively small. But as we get access to funding from the GCF and other areas where we're going for GCF accreditation, but we will also look at the National Adaptation Fund and other mechanisms that are out there. We will not stay only at GCF to be able to bring these funds in. And what DFC is looking to be is more a catalyst to some, in a sense. We can't take all the risk. We don't have the capital structure to do that. So we will also have to collaborate with the commercial banking system to design projects with them so that we could de-risk the project enough that it makes sense for them to come in, and we could do some second-tier lending and make funds available for them to get to their clients as well. So that's what we aim to do as we go down the road. But to answer your question in short, every project we look on, for some years, to a certain extent, but even more so since April last year. And since March of this year, really, because we now have rolled out the ESMS. We piloted it last year, and since March of this year, it's for every project we're doing. We're taking that into consideration to ensure that the projects look after all issues to do with climate and biodiversity and social issues.
Okay, thank you.
And gender as well. I didn't mention that.
Right, your gender equity program. Right.
Yeah, that's climate and gender are cross-cutting themes in everything.
Yes. Okay, so thank you for that information. I want to touch now on the Master Guarantee Agreement for Credit Risk Abatement Facility. We know that DFC has partnered with the CARICOM Development Fund in this regard. So how has this collaboration supported SMEs? We speak about SMEs a lot on this show. So if you can touch a little bit on that for us, please.
Okay, so I think we are one of the entities in the Caribbean or CARICOM that's piloting the CRAF, as they call it, right, the CRAF. It started a bit slow because Belize needed to update their energy policy and pass new regulations for distributed generation. The energy policy was updated, I believe, or a new one was launched in November last year, and the new regulations are coming out. A bunch came out in February. So we are now getting to the point where this market structure and the regulatory structure is there to allow for this to happen. Having said that, we had a big launch of this last year in September with the CDF. And coming out of that, the CDF made available technical support to any entity that's interested in adopting renewable energy, where they will provide the engineering resources to essentially look and do the analysis of your business, of your project, and then develop the project to the proposal to bring to the DFC. Obviously, that's a sweetener because an entity would not have to pay for that. That has created interest, and so we are now seeing bigger firms coming in to be a part of it. So it's moving. It's starting to move. Now I'll say this to you: the DFC reached out to government and said, let's look at the definition of MSME, and not necessarily the micro and the small, but more on the medium side. But the entire thing, but we were focusing on the medium because we are getting funds for MSMEs, right? That's what's in the development space right now. But Belize at first had, I believe it was $1.5 million Belize dollars in gross sales for the year as a medium enterprise. And then we said that's too small. And so then it was raised to 4. And so we went back to government and said, when we're talking about export earnings, the firms that are exporting in Belize are firms that earn more than 4 million Belize dollars a year in gross sales, right? So let's adopt the international definition. And the government took the recommendation. Obviously, all the Ministry of Economic Development, everybody were on board with that. And so the definition now goes up to 15 million US dollars or 30 million Belize dollars on the high end, which means that most business in Belize falls into the MSME space. And that only makes sense because most things in Belize are MSME in the global context. By getting that change in the definition, that has opened up the opportunity for DFC to lend and to collaborate with other financial institutions to provide financing to bigger firms in Belize as well, not only the micro and the small, which remain important, don't get me wrong there,
right,
but we could have a greater impact for firms that have a bigger footprint that needs to adopt their renewable energy and can have some greater generative powers as well. So, that all happened since November last year as well, in terms of the change in the legislation there. So all of these things are moving, and we are now starting to see an increase in our pipeline for renewable energy loans.
Okay.
There were a couple 7-digit loans, or high 6-digit, 7-digit loans that have come forth.
Okay.
And if I could just touch the CRAF, right? What the CRAF does for the more micro and small, it allows us to de-risk the project, give cheaper interest rates. We can do around 6%, and that's very, very competitive. And it means we don't have to focus as much on land collateral as in the past, so it creates more financial inclusion in the sense, because essentially the CRAF is kind of like an insurance where if we do everything the right way, we take all the steps to collect. If the project cannot repay, then DFC will be made good for about 80% of the exposure. But it's not automatic, right? It's not that the client can just decide not to pay and then DFC gets 80%. There's a whole bunch of things that must be go through proper due diligence and follow. And if the camel passes through the eye of the needle, then DFC can recover about 80% of what's outstanding.
Right. So, Mr. Anderson, while you're here talking about your loan distribution, we know that over the past 5 years, your loan approvals has increased to some $11.76 million, which was the highest over the last 5 years. How has the increase in the loan approvals contributed to the economic growth of Belize, and what impact do you think it had on the MSMEs, homeowners, and students who want to pursue their tertiary education goals?
Okay, so just let's clarify some figures, right? So in terms of approvals, approvals for DFC, I'll just give you a quick trend, right? It was 20 million in 2018. It went down to 16 million or 17 million in 2019. Then in 2020, in COVID, it actually went from 17 to 24. That's because DFC did a lot of forbearance and counter-cyclical lending. So when entities need help, then it comes in. And in 2021, then it jumped from 24 to 33. In 2022, it was at 32. And last year, it jumped from 32 to 36. And we're aiming to do about 54 or 55 this year. So that's the trend. To answer your question, let's look at recent information. If you look at what the Statistical Institute have been talking about exports, and you look at, let's say, the banana sector, you've seen a big jump in banana exports. That is directly attributable to the intervention of the DFC last year into the banana industry. If you look at cattle being exported, DFC is the entity that provided the loan to the business that had the contract with Sukarne, and then we provided a lot of loans in the value chain to ensure that the ranchers, the livestock, the cattle owners were able to get more heads of cattle available for the trade. Not all of it is going to Mexico, but all of that has resulted in a push up in price. So in the shrimp industry, we have actually gotten things back to the point where in the past, Belize could not grow shrimp again because of the early mortality syndrome disease. We worked with Royal Mayan Shrimp Farm Limited, and big kudos to them. They did a lot of work. They have actually created patented technology, by the way, and they are able now to produce shrimp at up to 32 grams, so the big jumbo size shrimp, and they have been doing that over the past year and a half easily. So now they are being scaled. They're scaling up back. In terms of education, the DFC education facility goes back many, many years. I had a DFC scholarship that when I went to school in the States. I had a Fulbright, but I needed more money, and DFC is where I came, and I paid it back. I didn't get a write-off, guys. So that continues, and we're working to promote the STEM space, but we're here to provide support. We also have a special education fund for students who have the ability, but they don't have the family support, for different challenges, that they can actually come in, get a loan, and then they pay after they finish. So that's to provide more access and more equity in the population as well. And that's funded out of some special funds from the Caribbean Development Fund.
Okay, well, thank you so much for those insights. But we are out of time for today. But before we conclude our discussions, is there anything that you would like to share with us in terms of the future direction of DFC?
Yeah, a lot of exciting things are happening at the DFC, and the single most exciting thing at this point is we're moving from a traditional brick and mortar to becoming a digital first organization. So stay tuned, look at us at the end of the year, and you'll see DFC is coming leaps and bounds. We just, with the support of the IDB in terms of technical support and monetary support in terms of funding to get a new loan management system and strengthen the whole wide area network and security architecture for the DFC from ICDF Taiwan. So thanks to the government of Taiwan for that. We're in the process now. We just signed the contract last week to start the implementation of our new loan management system. And that comes with artificial intelligence, machine learning, a whole lot of cool stuff that will allow us not only to provide better client service in a digital space as well, but also to be able to measure and monitor impact and give better answers to some of the questions that you may ask from time to time.
Okay, that's all fun and exciting indeed. So, but thank you, Mr. Anderson. We appreciate you very much for coming here with us today via Zoom, and we just want to wish you and DFC all the best in your future endeavors.
All right, thanks very much, and keep up the great work. You have a really good show.
Thank you
very much.
When we return, we discuss a staple event in our country, the National Agriculture and Trade Show. Don't go away.